The night watchman begins his evening in the quiet, echoing halls of a stone-built gallery, moving with a slow, deliberate grace as the city outside settles into a hushed stillness. The air is cool and carries the faint scent of old wood and polished stone, while the only sound is the rhythmic, melodic chime of his brass keys, a gentle music that signals the start of his peaceful vigil. He moves through the long corridors where the moonlight traces silver patterns across the floors, checking each latch with a steady hand and finding a deep sense of comfort in the predictable, repetitive nature of his rounds. He has walked these same halls for many years now, and each evening feels like a continuation of the one before, a soft thread of sameness that connects one night to the next in an unbroken line of quiet duty. The walls around him are thick and solid, built long ago from gray stone that has weathered countless seasons, and the floors beneath his feet are worn smooth by generations of footsteps that came before his own. There is something deeply reassuring about this place, about the way it stands unchanged while the world outside shifts and moves in its own hurried way. As he walks, the watchman lets his hand trail along the cool surface of the wall, feeling the slight texture of the stone beneath his fingertips. His footsteps are soft and measured, falling into a rhythm that matches the gentle ticking of the old clock at the end of the main hall. The sound of his keys creates a quiet melody as they sway from the ring at his belt, a familiar music that has become as much a part of the evening as the darkness itself. He knows every door in this building, every window, every corner where the shadows gather most thickly, and there is a comfort in this knowledge that settles over him like a well-worn blanket. The gallery is filled with paintings and sculptures, silent companions that watch over the empty rooms with patient, unchanging faces. The watchman does not pay much attention to the art itself. He has seen each piece so many times that they have become part of the building's architecture, as fixed and permanent as the walls that hold them. Instead, he notices the way the moonlight falls across a particular canvas, or the way a shadow drapes itself over the shoulder of a marble figure, and these small observations become part of his nightly routine, expected and comforting in their regularity. He reaches the first door on his route and pauses, drawing out his keys with a slow, practiced motion. The lock turns smoothly under his touch, and he checks the latch to ensure it is secure before moving on to the next. This simple action, repeated over and over throughout the night, has a calming quality that the watchman has come to appreciate deeply. There is no rush, no urgency, only the steady progression from one door to the next, one room to the next, 1 hour to the next. The building is large, with many rooms that branch off from the main corridors like the chambers of some great sleeping creature. The watchman moves through each space with the same unhurried care, his eyes taking in the familiar sights without truly registering them. A velvet rope stretched across a doorway, a bench positioned beneath a tall window, a potted plant sitting in the corner, its leaves catching the faint glow from the street lamps outside. These details have become so familiar that they require no thought, no consideration, and the watchman finds peace in this absence of surprise. In one of the larger galleries, the ceiling rises high above his head, and his footsteps echo softly in the vast space. The walls here are lined with paintings in heavy gilt frames, their surfaces darkened by time and shadow. The watchman walks past them slowly, his gaze drifting over the familiar images without really seeing them. He knows that if he were to look closely, he would find landscapes and portraits, scenes of long-ago moments, frozen in oil and canvas. But tonight, as on every night, he is content to let them remain as they are, silent and still, asking nothing of him. At the far end of this gallery there is a door that leads to a narrow staircase. The watchman climbs the stairs with the same measured pace, his hand resting lightly on the wooden banister that has been polished smooth by countless hands before his. The stairs creak gently beneath his weight, a soft complaint that has become as familiar as his own breathing. At the top he emerges into another corridor, this one smaller and more intimate than the grand halls below, with lower ceilings and walls painted in a pale shade that seems to absorb the moonlight and hold it softly. Here the watchman's routine continues in the same gentle pattern. Door after door, window after window, each one checked and found secure. The building protects itself as much as he protects it, its solid construction and heavy locks providing a barrier between the quiet interior and the world beyond. The watchman is simply a witness to this protection, a guardian who walks the halls and confirms what is already known, that all is well, that nothing has changed, that the night is passing as it should. He reaches a window that looks out over the street below, and he pauses here for a moment, as he often does. The city outside is mostly dark, with only a few lights glowing in distant windows and the occasional sweep of headlights as a car passes by. The street is empty and still, and the trees that line the pavement sway gently in a breeze that the watchman cannot feel from inside his protected space. He stands at the window and watches, not because he expects to see anything of interest, but because this pause has become part of his routine, a moment of stillness within the stillness that allows him to gather himself before continuing on. The glass of the window is cool against his palm when he rests his hand there, and he can see his own faint reflection looking back at him, a shadowy figure in dark clothes, indistinct and ghost-like in the dim light. He does not dwell on this reflection, does not consider what it means or what it says about the passage of time. Instead, he simply stands and looks out at the quiet street, letting the minutes pass in their own slow way. After a while, he turns from the window and continues his rounds. The corridor stretches ahead of him, lined with more doors that lead to storage rooms and offices, small spaces where the work of the gallery takes place during the daylight hours. At night, these rooms are empty and dark, their purpose suspended until morning returns. The watchman checks each door in turn, testing the handles and ensuring that the locks have been properly set. His movements are automatic now, requiring no conscious thought, and his mind is free to wander as his body carries out its familiar tasks. He thinks about the weather outside, the way the air felt when he arrived at the start of his shift. There had been a coolness to the evening, a hint of moisture that suggested rain might come before morning. He wonders if it is raining now, if the streets outside are wet and gleaming, if the sound of drops against the windows will join the other quiet sounds of the night. But inside the gallery all is dry and still, and whether it rains or not makes little difference to the watchman's duties. As he walks, he becomes aware of the way his footsteps sound in different parts of the building. In the main halls, they echo and expand, filling the space with a soft percussion. In the smaller corridors, they are muffled and contained, pressed close by the walls on either side. On the stone stairs, they ring out clear and sharp, while on the wooden floors of the upper rooms, they produce a gentle creaking that speaks of age and weight. The watchman has come to know these sounds as intimately as he knows the rooms themselves, and they provide a kind of music that accompanies him through the night. He reaches another window, this one set into a small alcove, where a bench has been placed for visitors to rest during their daytime tours. The watchman does not sit on the bench. He never does during his rounds, but he pauses again to look out at the night. From this window he can see a different part of the city, a view of rooftops and chimneys silhouetted against the dark sky. The moon is higher now than it was when he began his shift, and its light falls across the buildings in a soft wash that removes all color and reduces everything to shades of gray and black. There is something peaceful about this view, about the way the city looks when most of its inhabitants are sleeping, and the urgency of the day has been replaced by the calm of night. The watchman knows that somewhere out there, other people are awake, other watchmen, perhaps, or nurses in hospitals, or bakers beginning their early morning preparations, but from here it seems as though he is the only person in the world, the sole witness to this quiet time between one day and the next. He turns away from the window and continues down the corridor, his keys chiming softly with each step. The rhythm of his walk has settled into a steady, unhurried pace that seems to match the beating of his own heart, and he feels a deep sense of contentment wash over him. This is his work, his purpose during these dark hours, and there is a satisfaction in knowing exactly what is expected of him and in carrying out those expectations with care and attention. The corridor leads to another staircase, this one spiraling down to the ground floor in a tight curve that requires the watchman to place his feet carefully on each narrow step. He descends slowly, his hand following the curve of the banister, his eyes adjusting to the deeper darkness of the stairwell. At the bottom he emerges into a room filled with glass display cases, each one containing small objects, ancient pottery, delicate jewelry, fragments of stone inscribed with long-forgotten words. The cases gleam dully in the moonlight that filters through the high windows, and the watchman walks among them like a visitor in a sleeping city, observing but not disturbing. He checks the locks on the cases as part of his routine, though he knows they will be secure. They are always secure. Nothing ever changes in this room or in any of the rooms he visits during his nightly rounds. The objects in the cases remain fixed in their positions. The dust settles in the same patterns. The shadows fall in the same places. This sameness is not boring to the watchman. It is, instead, deeply comforting, a reassurance that the world inside these walls is stable and constant, untouched by the chaos that sometimes exists beyond them. From the display room he moves into a long gallery that runs along the side of the building. This gallery has tall windows on one side, looking out onto a small courtyard garden that the watchman cannot see clearly in the darkness, but knows is there. During the day, visitors can look through these windows and see the carefully tended plants, the stone fountain, the paths of pale gravel that wind between flower beds. At night, the garden is a mystery of shadows and shapes, and the watchman is content to let it remain that way, unexplored and peaceful in its darkness. He walks the length of the gallery, checking each window in turn. The latches are all secure, as he knew they would be, and the windows are cool to the touch, their glass holding the chill of the night air. The watchman can see his breath in small clouds as he exhales, and he realizes that the temperature has dropped since he began his shift. This is normal for the late hours, this gradual cooling that comes as the night deepens and the heat of the day is lost to the sky above. He does not mind the cold. It is part of the night, part of the experience of his work, and he is dressed warmly enough in his thick jacket and sturdy boots. As he continues his rounds, the watchman becomes aware of the passage of time in a way that is not urgent or anxious, but simply present. He knows that hours have passed since he arrived, knows that more hours will pass before his shift ends and the morning watchman arrives to take his place. But this knowledge does not weigh on him or make him wish for the time to pass more quickly. Instead, he accepts it as he accepts everything else about his work, with the quiet patience that has grown deeper with each passing year. He reaches the main entrance hall, a grand space with a high ceiling and a floor of polished marble that reflects the faint light from outside. The front doors are solid and heavy, secured with multiple locks that the watchman checks carefully, testing each one to ensure it is properly engaged. These doors are the primary barrier between the gallery and the outside world, and while the watchman trusts in their strength, he still performs his check with the same attention he gives to every other door in the building. Standing in the entrance hall, he can see the street through the glass panels that flank the doors. A car passes by, its headlights sweeping across the marble floor in a brief flash of illumination before disappearing again. The watchman watches it go, noting its passage without any particular interest or concern. The car is simply part of the night, part of the world that continues to move and function while he stands guard inside these quiet walls. He turns away from the doors and walks across the entrance hall, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. On the walls, plaques list the names of donors and patrons, people who have contributed to the gallery over the years, their generosity preserved in brass letters that gleam softly in the dim light. The watchman does not read these names. He has seen them countless times, but he is aware of them, aware of the history they represent and the continuity they suggest. This building has stood for a long time, and with care and attention, it will stand for a long time yet. From the entrance hall, he moves into a series of smaller rooms that house the gallery's administrative offices. These rooms are dark and silent during the night, the desks cleared of papers, the computers sleeping in their standby mode, the chairs pushed neatly into place. The watchman checks the doors to each office, ensuring they are locked, and he peers through the windows to confirm that all is as it should be. There is nothing remarkable to see, only empty rooms waiting for morning, but he looks anyway, because this is his duty, and he performs it with care. In one of the offices, a small lamp has been left on, casting a pool of warm light across a desk. The watchman makes a note to mention this to the day staff when his shift ends, but for now he leaves the lamp burning. It does no harm, and there is something almost pleasant about the small glow it provides, a reminder that this building is not just a repository for art and artifacts, but also a place where people work and create and contribute to something larger than themselves. He leaves the administrative wing and returns to the main galleries, beginning another circuit of the building. This is how the night passes for the watchman, in these slow, repetitive rounds that take him through the same spaces again and again, each time confirming what was confirmed before, each time finding the same reassuring sameness that tells him all is well. There is a meditative quality to this work, a way in which the repetition and routine allow his mind to settle into a state of calm alertness that is neither tense nor bored, but simply present. As he walks, the watchman notices small details that might escape someone moving more quickly or with less attention. A slight draft from a vent in the ceiling, the way the moonlight has shifted position since his last circuit, moving across the floor as the moon travels its arc through the sky. The faint smell of cleaning solution that lingers in a corridor where the floors were washed earlier in the day. These details are not important in themselves, but together they create a picture of the building as a living thing, breathing and shifting in subtle ways, even as it remains fundamentally unchanged. He passes by a sculpture that stands in the center of a circular room, its form rising from a marble base in smooth, abstract curves. The watchman has seen this sculpture so many times that he no longer really sees it, but tonight he pauses and looks at it with fresh eyes, trying to remember what it was that made the artist create this particular shape. He cannot remember if he ever knew, and after a moment he continues on his way, leaving the sculpture to its silent contemplation of the empty room. The hours continue to pass in their slow, steady way. The watchman completes another circuit of the building, then another, each one taking him through the same sequence of rooms and corridors and staircases. His legs grow tired, but it is a good tiredness, the kind that comes from honest work rather than restless energy. He knows that later, when his shift ends and he returns home, he will sleep deeply and well, his body grateful for the rest after a night of constant, gentle movement. At some point during the night, he is not sure exactly when the rain that he wondered about earlier begins to fall. He hears it first as a soft pattering against the high windows, a gentle percussion that adds a new layer to the building's nighttime sounds. The watchman pauses at one of the windows to watch the rain, seeing the drops catch the light from the street lamps and shimmer as they fall. The street outside grows darker as the rain washes over it, and the trees bend slightly under the weight of the water on their leaves. Inside the gallery, everything remains dry and protected. The rain cannot reach the art, cannot touch the floors or walls, or any of the precious objects housed within these thick stone walls. The watchman feels a sense of satisfaction at this, a quiet pride in the building's ability to shelter what it holds. He stands at the window and watches the rain for a while, listening to its steady rhythm, and feeling grateful that he is inside rather than out in the wet darkness. Eventually he turns from the window and continues his rounds, the sound of the rain accompanying him as he walks. The building feels even more peaceful now, wrapped in the gentle sound of water falling from the sky. The watchman's footsteps seem softer somehow, or perhaps it is just that the rain provides a background against which all other sounds are measured. He moves through the galleries with the same steady pace, checking doors and windows, ensuring that nothing has changed, that all remains as it should be. In one of the upper corridors, he passes a radiator that ticks and hisses softly as hot water flows through its pipes. The watchman pauses to warm his hands above the radiator, feeling the heat rise against his palms. The building's heating system is old but well maintained, and it keeps the interior comfortable even on the coldest nights. The watchman is grateful for this warmth, for the way it takes the edge off the chill that seeps in through the windows and doors. He stands by the radiator for a moment longer than necessary, simply enjoying the sensation of heat on his cold hands before continuing on his way. As the night deepens, the watchman finds his thoughts drifting in a way that feels natural and unforced. He thinks about other nights, other shifts, the years he has spent walking these same halls. He thinks about the people who visit the gallery during the day, how they move through the rooms with interest and curiosity, seeing things that he no longer notices because of their familiarity. He thinks about the artists who created the works housed here, how they could not have imagined that their paintings and sculptures would one day be guarded by a watchman, walking slow circles through the night. These thoughts are not profound or troubling. They are simply the quiet musings of a mind at rest, allowed to wander where it will, because the body is engaged in familiar, automatic work. The watchman does not try to direct his thoughts or shape them into anything meaningful. He simply lets them come and go like clouds drifting across the moon, present for a moment and then gone, replaced by others equally ephemeral and unimportant. He completes another circuit of the building, his routine so ingrained that he could probably walk it with his eyes closed and still find every door, every window, every turning exactly where it should be. But he keeps his eyes open, watching the familiar spaces pass by, noting the small changes that mark the progression of the night. The moon has moved further across the sky. The rain has settled into a steady, constant fall. The shadows have shifted position as the hours have passed. At some point, the watchman realizes that he is hungry, and he remembers the sandwich he brought with him for his break. It is time, he thinks, to pause in his rounds and take a moment to rest and eat. This thought brings a small surge of pleasant anticipation, the knowledge that a break is coming, that soon he will sit down and take the weight off his feet for a little while. But first he completes his current circuit, finishing what he started before allowing himself to stop. He makes his way to the small room he thinks of as his own, a space near the back of the building that was once used for storage, but now serves as the watchman's break room. It is not much, just a single room with a table, a chair, a small refrigerator, and an electric kettle, but it is warm and comfortable, and the watchman has come to appreciate it as a refuge within the larger building, a place where he can pause and gather himself before returning to his rounds. He enters the room and closes the door softly behind him, feeling the change in atmosphere immediately. This room is smaller and more enclosed than the galleries, and it holds warmth more effectively. The watchman shrugs off his jacket and hangs it on the hook by the door, then moves to the table where he left his lunchbox at the start of his shift. Inside he finds the sandwich he prepared before leaving home, simple bread and cheese, nothing elaborate, and he unwraps it slowly, enjoying the familiar ritual of preparation. Before eating, he fills the kettle with water and sets it to boil. The kettle begins to hum almost immediately, a soft sound that grows gradually louder as the water heats. The watchman stands by the table and listens to this sound, finding comfort in its predictability. He knows exactly how long it will take for the water to boil, knows the precise moment when the kettle will click off, has heard this same sequence countless times before. While he waits, he takes a bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly and tasting the simple flavors of bread and cheese. The kettle reaches its boiling point and clicks off, and the watchman pours the hot water into a mug where he has placed a tea bag. The steam rises in lazy spirals, carrying the scent of tea into the small room. He adds a little milk from the refrigerator and stirs the tea with a spoon, watching the liquid swirl in the mug. Then he carries both his sandwich and his tea to the table, and sits down in the chair, which creaks slightly under his weight in a way that has become familiar and expected. Sitting down feels good after so many hours of walking. The watchman can feel his muscles relaxing, his body settling into the chair with a small sigh of relief. He takes a sip of his tea, careful not to burn his mouth on the hot liquid, and feels the warmth spread through his chest and down into his stomach. Outside, the rain continues to fall, and he can hear it drumming softly against the window of his small room. Inside, all is warm and dry and peaceful. He eats his sandwich slowly, taking small bites and chewing thoroughly, in no hurry to finish. The bread is soft and the cheese is mild, and together they provide simple nourishment that the watchman's body welcomes after hours of activity. Between bites, he sips his tea, feeling it warm him from the inside. There is no one to talk to, no one to share this meal with, but the watchman does not feel lonely. He is comfortable in his own company, content with the silence and the simplicity of this moment. As he eats, his mind continues its gentle wandering. He thinks about the rain outside, about how the garden and the courtyard will benefit from this water, how the plants will drink it in and grow greener. He thinks about the morning that will eventually come, how the sky will lighten and the rain will perhaps stop, and the day's staff will arrive to begin their work. He thinks about his own bed waiting for him at home, about the sleep that will come easily after a night of walking and watching. These thoughts are peaceful and require no response from him. They simply exist, floating through his mind, like the steam from his tea, present and then gone. The watchman finishes his sandwich and drinks the last of his tea, feeling satisfied and ready to return to his rounds. But he does not rush to stand. Instead, he sits for a few minutes longer, allowing himself this small period of rest, this brief interlude in the steady rhythm of his night. Eventually, he rises from the chair and carries his empty mug to the small sink in the corner of the room. He rinses it out with water and sets it on the draining board, then gathers up the wrapper from his sandwich and places it in the bin. His movements are unhurried and methodical, each action completed fully before moving on to the next. When everything is tidy, he puts his jacket back on, feeling the coolness of the fabric against his arms before his body heat begins to warm it again. He pauses at the door of his small room and looks back, making sure everything is as it should be. The kettle is unplugged. The chair is pushed back into place. The table is clear. Satisfied, he opens the door and steps back out into the corridor, returning to the cooler air and greater space of the building proper. The brief rest has refreshed him, and he feels ready to continue his rounds with renewed purpose, though that purpose is the same as it has always been, to walk and watch, to check and confirm, to be present through the quiet hours of the night. He resumes his circuit, his footsteps falling back into their familiar rhythm. The rain has grown heavier now, and he can hear it more clearly as he passes by the windows, a constant rushing sound that fills the building with white noise. The watchman finds this sound soothing, a reminder of nature's cycles and patterns, of water falling from the sky to nourish the earth below. It is a sound as old as time, heard by countless generations of people before him, and it will continue long after he is gone. As he walks through a long gallery lined with paintings, the watchman notices that one of the frames is slightly crooked, tilted just a few degrees off true. He pauses and carefully adjusts it, using his hands to straighten it until it hangs properly on the wall. This small act of correction gives him a quiet satisfaction, the knowledge that he has contributed in some tiny way to the order and presentation of the gallery. It is not part of his official duties. He is here to guard and protect, not to curate, but he does it anyway because it seems right, because it is something that needs doing, and he is here to do it. He continues on, moving through room after room, his path as predictable as the phases of the moon. In a gallery devoted to ancient pottery, he walks among the glass cases and observes the shapes of vessels created thousands of years ago. In a room filled with portraits, he passes beneath the painted gazes of long-dead nobles and merchants. In a corridor hung with tapestries, he feels the weight of history in the ancient threads and faded colors. Each space has its own character, its own particular quality, but together they form a continuous whole, a building dedicated to the preservation and display of human creativity across the centuries. The night is moving toward its deepest point now, the hours after midnight when the world feels most still and silent. The watchman can sense this shift, can feel the way the darkness seems to deepen and settle more heavily around the building. This is the time when his rounds feel most like a meditation, when the repetition and routine allow his consciousness to drift into a state that is neither fully awake nor asleep, but somewhere in between, a gentle alertness that requires no effort to maintain. He climbs the spiral staircase again, his hand trailing up the banister, his feet finding each step without needing to look. At the top he emerges into the upper corridor and continues his circuit. The building is utterly silent now, except for his footsteps and the sound of the rain. Even the old clock has stopped its ticking, or perhaps he has simply stopped hearing it, so accustomed has he become to its presence. He moves like a ghost through these halls, a benign spirit whose only purpose is to watch and protect, to ensure that nothing disturbs the peace of this place. At one of the windows, he pauses again to look out at the rain. The street below is slick and shining, and the rain falls in sheets that shimmer in the light from the street lamps. The watchman watches a single drop of water run down the outside of the window, following its path with his eyes as it traces a wandering course through other drops, merging and dividing until it finally reaches the bottom of the pane and disappears. There is something mesmerizing about this simple movement, this meaningless journey of a single drop of water, and the watchman stands and watches the rain for a long time, his mind empty of thoughts, his body still and at rest. When he finally turns away from the window, he realizes that the rain is beginning to ease. The heavy drumming has softened to a gentler pattering, and through the clouds he can see patches of clearer sky where stars are beginning to emerge. The storm is passing, as storms always do, and the night is settling back into its usual stillness. The watchman feels a small sense of loss at this, as if something interesting has departed, but mostly he feels the same calm acceptance that characterizes all his reactions to the world around him. The rain came and now it goes, and both states are equally acceptable, equally part of the natural order of things. He continues his rounds, moving through the familiar spaces with his accustomed care. His body is more tired now, the accumulated hours of walking beginning to make themselves felt in his legs and back, but he does not mind this tiredness. It is earned, a result of honest work, and he knows from experience that it will make his eventual rest all the sweeter. For now there are still hours to go, still circuits to complete, still duties to perform, and he carries them out with the same attention he has given them all night long. In the main entrance hall, he pauses by the clock and checks the time. The night is advancing, moving steadily toward morning, though morning is still some time away. The watchman does not wish for it to come more quickly, does not count down the hours until his shift ends. Instead, he exists fully in the present moment, accepting each minute as it comes, finding contentment in the simple act of being here, doing this work, fulfilling this role. He walks to the administrative wing again, checking the offices, as he has done several times already tonight. Everything is exactly as it was before, the desks still empty, the computers still sleeping, the chairs still pushed neatly into place. The small lamp that was left on earlier still burns, casting its pool of warm light across the desk. The watchman looks at it for a moment, appreciating the constancy of its glow, the way it has remained steady and unchanging throughout the night. It is a small thing, this lamp, but there is comfort in its presence, in the simple fact that it continues to do what it was designed to do, asking nothing, expecting nothing, simply being. From the offices he returns to the galleries and begins another slow circuit. The rain has stopped now, and the silence it leaves behind seems deeper and more complete than the silence that came before it. The watchman's footsteps sound louder in this new quiet, and he finds himself walking even more softly, not wanting to disturb the stillness that has settled over the building. The moon has broken free from the clouds and shines brightly through the windows, casting stark shadows and pools of silver light across the floors. In a gallery devoted to landscape paintings, the watchman pauses before a canvas that shows a moonlit scene, a river winding through dark hills, trees silhouetted against a pale sky, a sense of quiet and solitude that mirrors his own experience of this night. He has looked at this painting many times before, but tonight it seems to speak to him in a way it has not before, or perhaps he is simply more receptive to its quiet message. He stands before it for several minutes, not thinking about the painting or analyzing it, simply looking and feeling a kind of companionship with the artist who created it, whoever they were, whenever they lived. Eventually he moves on, continuing his rounds through the building. The night is beginning to feel different now, taking on the quality of late night, moving toward early morning, a subtle shift that the watchman can sense even though the darkness outside remains complete. It is something in the air, perhaps, or in the quality of the silence, or in his own body's awareness of time passing. He knows from years of experience that morning will come, that the night will end as all nights end, but for now he is still here, still walking, still watching, still performing his duty with care and attention. He climbs the stairs again, his legs protesting slightly at the effort, his breath coming a little harder than it did earlier in the night. At the top he pauses to rest, his hand on the banister, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. He is not as young as he once was, and these stairs feel steeper than they did years ago, but he does not dwell on this. Age is simply another part of life, another change to be accepted with the same equanimity he brings to everything else. He continues down the upper corridor, checking the doors and windows, finding everything secure and unchanged. In one of the smaller galleries, the watchman notices that the moonlight has moved to illuminate a sculpture that was earlier in shadow. The sculpture is of a figure seated in contemplation, its stone form weathered by centuries of existence, The moonlight gives it an almost living quality, as if at any moment it might move or speak, and the watchman stands looking at it for a long moment, appreciating this chance illumination, this brief transformation brought about by the movement of the moon across the sky. Soon the light will move on and the sculpture will return to shadow, but for now it has its moment of recognition, its brief time in the spotlight. The watchman completes his circuit and descends the stairs again, his hands steadying him on the banister, his feet finding each step carefully in the dim light. At the bottom, he returns to the main floor and begins another walk through the galleries. He has lost count of how many times he has made this circuit tonight, but it does not matter. Each circuit is complete in itself, each one a fresh confirmation that all is well, that the building and its contents remain safe and secure under his watch. As he walks, he becomes aware that the darkness outside is beginning to change, very slowly and almost imperceptibly, but changing nonetheless. The black of full night is being replaced by the deep blue that precedes dawn, a gradual lightening that speaks of the sun's eventual return. The watchman notices this shift without any particular emotion. Morning will come, because morning always comes, and when it does, his shift will end, and he will go home. But that time is not quite here yet, and so he continues his rounds, moving through the galleries with the same steady pace he has maintained all night. The building seems to sense the approaching day as well. The shadows are not quite as dark as they were, and the shapes of objects in the dim light are becoming slightly more defined. The watchman can see details now that were hidden earlier, the grain of wood in a door frame, the texture of stone in a wall, the individual leaves of the plant sitting in its corner. These small revelations come gradually, so slowly that he is barely aware of them happening, but together they mark the passage from night toward day, from darkness toward light. He returns to his small room one last time, not to eat or drink, but simply to stand quietly in the space that has become familiar and comfortable. He looks around at the table, the chair, the kettle, the small refrigerator, all the simple objects that make up this modest space. In a few hours he will leave this building and not return until the next night, and in his absence other people will move through these halls, bringing noise and activity and purpose to spaces that now know only silence and stillness. But for this moment the building is still his to watch over, still his to guard and protect. He leaves the room and continues his rounds, moving through the galleries one more time. The light outside is definitely growing now, the deep blue of pre-dawn giving way to lighter shades that hint at the colors that will come with full daylight. The watchman can see the shapes of trees outside the windows, can make out the individual buildings across the street, can see details that were invisible in the darkness. But inside the gallery all is still dim and quiet, protected from the coming day by heavy curtains and thick walls. He walks through a gallery he has visited many times already this night, but each time he passes through it feels slightly different, as if the space itself changes with the hours even though nothing within it has moved. The paintings on the walls remain in their positions. The benches sit empty and undisturbed. The information plaques beside each artwork continue to offer their silent explanations to an audience that is not present. Yet something shifts with each passing. Perhaps it is simply the watchman's own state of mind, the way his thoughts have settled more deeply into stillness as the night has progressed, or perhaps it is the light which alters everything it touches, even in the smallest increments. He pauses beside a painting of a harbor scene, ships at anchor in calm water, the sky above them filled with clouds that the artist rendered in shades of gray and white. The watchman has looked at this painting countless times, but tonight he notices something he has not noticed before: a small figure standing on the dock in the foreground, barely visible, easy to overlook among the larger elements of the composition. The figure appears to be watching the ships, waiting perhaps for someone to arrive or depart, and the watchman feels a small kinship with this painted person, both of them engaged in the act of watching, both of them patient and still. He moves on, his footsteps carrying him past other paintings, other scenes frozen in time by artists long departed from this world. There is something deeply peaceful about being surrounded by these works of art during the quiet hours of the night, when they have no audience except for him. During the day, visitors move through these galleries with purpose and interest, reading the plaques, discussing the paintings, taking photographs and making notes. But at night, the art simply exists, asking nothing, expecting nothing, present in a way that feels complete and sufficient unto itself. The watchman reaches another window and looks out at the street below. A delivery truck passes by, its headlights cutting through the early morning dimness, and the watchman watches it until it disappears around a corner. He wonders briefly what the truck is delivering, where it is going, what kind of person is driving it at this early hour. But these thoughts do not linger. They arise and pass away like the truck itself, momentary visitors to his consciousness that leave no lasting impression. He turns from the window and walks down a long corridor that connects two wings of the building. This corridor is narrower than most, with a lower ceiling that makes the space feel more intimate. The walls here, painted a soft cream color that is yellowed slightly with age, and the floor is covered with a runner of dark carpet that muffles his footsteps. The watchman walks slowly down this corridor, his hand trailing along the wall, feeling the slight texture of the paint beneath his fingertips. At the end of the corridor, there is a door that leads to a storage area where extra benches and display cases are kept when not in use. He opens the door and peers into the storage room, though he knows already what he will find. The room is exactly as it always is, neat and orderly, with everything arranged carefully against the walls. The spare benches are stacked one on top of another, their wooden surfaces clean and polished. The extra display cases stand empty, their glass panels reflecting the dim light from the corridor. The watchman checks that nothing has been disturbed, that everything remains in its proper place, before closing the door again and continuing on his way. As he walks, he becomes aware of the many small sounds that make up the building's night-time symphony. The gentle ticking of the radiators as they heat and cool, the almost imperceptible creak of old wood settling in the walls and floors, the soft whisper of air moving through the ventilation system, the distant hum of the refrigerator in his break room. These sounds are so familiar that he usually does not consciously hear them, but tonight in this quiet pre-dawn hour they seem to rise to his awareness, and he listens to them with a kind of appreciation, recognizing them as the voice of the building itself, its way of speaking to him as he moves through its spaces. He climbs a different staircase this time, one that leads to a part of the upper floor he has not yet visited on this particular circuit. The stairs are narrower here, clearly meant for staff use rather than for visitors, and they wind upward in a tight spiral that requires the watchman to place his feet carefully on each step. His hand follows the curve of the railing, worn smooth by generations of hands before his, and he climbs slowly, taking his time, in no hurry to reach the top. When he emerges into the upper corridor, he finds himself in a section of the building devoted to smaller works, drawings, and prints that hang in simple frames along the walls. The watchman walks past them slowly, his eyes taking in the delicate lines and careful details that characterize this kind of art. There are sketches of faces, studies of hands and feet, landscapes rendered in pen and ink, botanical illustrations showing flowers and leaves with scientific precision. Each piece is small and quiet, requiring close attention to be fully appreciated, and the watchman gives them this attention as he passes, noting the skill and patience that went into their creation. At the end of this corridor, there is a small alcove where a window seat has been built into the wall beneath a tall window. The watchman has never sat on this seat during his rounds, but tonight, feeling the accumulated tiredness of the long night in his legs and back, he decides to rest for a moment. He lowers himself onto the seat, feeling the hardness of the wood beneath him, and looks out through the window at the lightening sky beyond. From this vantage point, he can see across the rooftops of the surrounding buildings to where the horizon is beginning to show the first hints of color, a pale band of yellow-orange that speaks of the sun's approach. The stars have faded now, overwhelmed by the growing light, and the moon has set or moved beyond his field of vision. The sky is transitioning from night to day, passing through that liminal time when it belongs fully to neither state but exists in a space between them. The watchman sits and watches this transformation, feeling no need to move or continue his rounds just yet. This moment of rest feels earned, a small gift he gives himself after hours of constant walking and watching. His body relaxes into the window seat, his muscles loosening their tension, his breathing becoming slower and deeper. He is tired, but not uncomfortably, so it is a good tiredness, the kind that will make sleep sweet and deep when it finally comes. Outside, the first birds of morning are becoming more active, their songs growing louder and more complex as they greet the coming day. The watchman listens to these songs and feels a quiet pleasure in their vitality, their celebration of another morning, another chance to fly and sing and exist in the world. He does not know what kind of birds they are. He has never been particularly interested in such details, but their music is pleasant, and he welcomes it as a sign that his night is drawing toward its close. After a while, he stands up from the window seat, feeling the stiffness in his joints as he straightens his legs and back. He stretches slightly, raising his arms above his head and feeling the pull in his shoulders, then lowers them again and continues on his way. The corridor stretches ahead of him, lined with its drawings and prints, and he walks its length one more time before descending the stairs and returning to the main floor. He makes his way through the galleries again, his route taking him past familiar paintings and sculptures, through rooms he has visited many times already this night. Each circuit feels slightly different from the last, not because anything has changed, but because he himself changes with each passing hour, his energy ebbing slowly, his mind settling into deeper states of quietness, his body growing more ready for rest. Yet he continues to perform his duties with the same care and attention, checking doors and windows, ensuring that all remains as it should be. In a gallery devoted to portraits, the watchman pauses before a painting of an elderly woman sitting in a chair. The woman in the portrait looks directly out from the canvas, her eyes meeting those of the viewer, her expression calm and dignified. She wears dark clothes and holds a book in her lap, and there is something in her bearing that suggests patience and acceptance, as if she has learned through long experience to take life as it comes without complaint or resistance. The watchman stands before this portrait and feels a kind of recognition, a sense that he and this painted woman understand something similar about the nature of quiet endurance and steady presence. He continues through the galleries, his path taking him through spaces filled with art from different periods and cultures. Here are medieval religious paintings with their gold leaf and symbolic imagery. There are Renaissance masterworks showing mythological scenes rendered with technical brilliance. Here are modernist abstractions that reduce the world to color and shape. The watchman moves among all of these without preference or judgment, accepting each style and period as equally valid, equally deserving of protection and care. As he walks, he notices that the light coming through the windows has changed again, growing brighter and more definite. The shadows in the galleries are beginning to retreat, pulling back into corners and alcoves where they will wait out the coming day. The building is slowly revealing itself in greater detail, showing textures and colors that were hidden during the darker hours. Soon the day staff will arrive and turn on the electric lights, and the galleries will be fully illuminated, ready for the visitors who will come to view the art and learn from the information, plaques, and perhaps sit on the benches to rest and contemplate. But for now, the building still belongs to the watchman, still maintains its nighttime character, even as morning approaches. He continues his rounds with the same steady dedication, walking through rooms and corridors, climbing and descending stairs, checking doors and windows. His body moves automatically through these familiar motions, requiring no conscious direction from his mind, which is free to observe and notice and simply be present in these final hours of his shift. He returns to the main entrance hall and stands for a moment looking at the front doors. Through the glass panels he can see that the street outside is beginning to show signs of life. A few early commuters walk past, bundled in coats and scarves against the morning chill. A cyclist rides by, their breath visible in the cool air. A bus stops at the corner, its doors opening to receive passengers, then closes and moves on. The city is waking up, beginning another day, entering into the bustle and activity that characterizes daytime life. Inside the gallery all remains quiet and still, but the watchman knows this quietness will not last much longer. Soon his colleague will arrive, and they will exchange a few words about the night. And then the watchman will leave and make his way home while the day shift takes over the responsibility of watching and protecting. This transition happens every morning, as reliable and predictable as sunrise itself, and the watchman takes comfort in this regularity, this assurance that the building is never left unguarded, that there is always someone present to ensure its safety. He walks away from the entrance hall and makes another circuit of the galleries, moving through the familiar spaces with his accustomed care. The tiredness is heavier in him now, making each step require slightly more effort than the one before, but he does not allow this tiredness to diminish the quality of his attention. He checks each door with the same thoroughness he brought to his first circuit of the night, tests each window latch with the same care, moves through each room with the same slow, deliberate pace. In a small gallery he has visited many times already tonight, he notices that the morning light has reached a painting that hangs on the wall near the window. The painting shows a winter landscape, bare trees, snow-covered ground, a pale sky that seems to hold the promise of more snow to come. The light from the window falls across this scene and brings out details that were invisible in the dimness, the individual branches of the trees, the subtle shadows in the snow, the delicate gradations of color in the sky. The watchman stands before this painting and looks at it as if seeing it for the first time, appreciating the way the light transforms it, reveals it, brings it more fully into being. He moves on, continuing through the galleries in his slow progression toward the completion of his shift. The building feels different now in the growing light, less mysterious perhaps, but no less peaceful, its character changing as day replaces night. The watchman accepts this change as he accepts all changes, without resistance or regret, simply noting it as another aspect of the natural cycle that governs all things. He climbs the stairs once more, his legs protesting at the effort, but carrying him upward nonetheless. At the top he walks through the upper corridors, checking the rooms and alcoves, ensuring that everything is as it should be. The windows up here show the sky more fully, and he can see that the clouds have broken apart during the night, leaving large patches of clear blue visible between them. The day will be fair, he thinks, or at least fairer than the rainy night that preceded it. As he descends the stairs for what he knows will be one of the last times before his shift ends, the watchman feels a quiet satisfaction settling over him. Another night has passed successfully. Another vigil has been completed. The building and its contents remain safe and secure, protected through the dark hours by his patient presence and careful attention. There is no glory in this work, no recognition or praise, but the watchman does not seek such things. The work itself is enough, the knowledge that he has fulfilled his responsibility, the certainty that he has done what he was meant to do. He reaches the bottom of the stairs and walks through the main floor galleries one more time, his circuit bringing him past paintings and sculptures that have become as familiar to him as old friends. He knows every crack in the walls, every uneven place in the floor, every spot where the light falls in a particular way. This building has become a second home to him over the years of his employment, a place where he feels comfortable and needed, where his presence serves a purpose, and his work has meaning. In the entrance hall he checks the time on the old clock and sees that the end of his shift is approaching. Soon the day watchman will arrive, and the transition will occur, and the watchman will step out into the morning air and begin his journey home. But until that moment comes, he remains present and attentive, continuing to watch over the building with the same care he has maintained throughout the night. In the main entrance hall, the watchman pauses by the front doors and looks through the glass panels at the street outside. The rain has left everything clean and fresh, and the pavement shines with moisture. A few early morning birds have begun to sing, their voices carrying through the still air. The watchman listens to their songs and feels a quiet satisfaction at the knowledge that another night has passed successfully, that his vigil is nearly complete, that soon he will be able to rest. But there is still time remaining, still a final circuit to complete before the day watchman arrives. The night watchman turns from the doors and walks back into the galleries, his footsteps echoing in the entrance hall. He moves through the familiar rooms one more time, checking doors that he knows are locked, looking at windows that he knows are secure, performing his duty to the very end of his shift. There is no urgency in his movements, no sense of hurry or impatience. He walks as he has walked all night, with steady, measured steps, giving each part of the building the attention it deserves. The light continues to grow outside, and the watchman can see the first rays of sunlight beginning to touch the tops of the buildings across the street. Soon they will reach the windows of the gallery, and the building will be filled with natural light, driving away the shadows that have been his companions throughout the night. But for now those shadows remain, and the watchman continues to move among them, a solitary figure in dark clothes walking through empty rooms. He climbs the stairs one final time, his legs heavy with tiredness, his body ready for rest. At the top he makes his last circuit of the upper floor, checking each room, each door, each window. Everything is as it should be, as it has been all night, as it will be when he returns tomorrow evening. The building stands firm and solid, unchanged by the passage of the night, ready to receive its daytime visitors and share with them the treasures it holds. As he descends the stairs for the last time, the watchman feels the weight of the night settling on him, a pleasant tiredness that speaks of work completed and duty fulfilled. He reaches the bottom of the stairs and walks slowly back toward the main entrance hall, where he knows the day watchman will soon arrive to take his place. But until that moment comes, this is still his time, still his watch, still his responsibility. He stands in the entrance hall and looks around at the familiar space, seeing it now in the gray light of early morning. The marble floor still gleams, though less brightly than it will when the sun fully rises. The plaques on the walls are becoming more visible, their brass letters catching the growing light. The front doors stand solid and secure, holding back the day while the night completes its final moments. The watchman feels no particular emotion about the ending of his shift. It is simply what happens, what has always happened, the natural conclusion to the night's work. Soon he will hand over responsibility to his colleague, will walk out those front doors into the morning air, will make his way home through streets that are beginning to wake and stir. But for now he stands in the quiet entrance hall and simply exists in this moment, this brief pause between night and day, this threshold time that belongs fully to neither darkness nor light. And he waits, calm and patient, for the day watchman to arrive and for his own long night to finally, gently, come to its end.